You guys ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. It is 6:30. We will call the May 18th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission to order. We'll start with roll call. Brooks. Mike.
Present.
Brian.
Present.
Thomas.
Present.
Alyssa.
Present.
Rob.
Present.
We have a quorum. All right, item number 3, approval of the agenda. I would entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4, approval of minutes of the May 4th, 2023 regular meeting.
I have a couple of...
Can we get your microphone?
Yes, please.
I have a couple of deals with minutes.
Okay,
Okay, the Stone Ridge Estates thing. Okay, Greg has concerns. Where it says, okay, Brian is the applicant requesting the change in zoning, it says. It wasn't Van Busker, isn't technically Van Busker the applicant requesting the change in zoning, and Brian, yeah, Brian is the representative who attended the meeting. It says, Brian Jackson, Van Busker Companies was present for discussion, and then the next sentence is, Brian is the applicant requesting the change in zoning, but I think that is misleading and should say Van Busker is the applicant requesting. Okay, and then a little
That
bit
seems-
later
okay.
on, a little bit later on, there's somebody's name, but there's no last name. And is that because we never got that guy? Is Tony, 701 North Quartz Avenue, no last name there.
He's also opposed.
Yeah.
probably,
It's because we just plain old don't have his last name.
It would be on there, it would be on there.
Okay. If we do have his last name, probably ought to put it in there. Yes, okay. And then I think there was a place there where there was just a one word with a period. And I didn't print it out. And
okay.
Okay, now I'm reading this as fast as I can and I'm not seeing it, so. So I think I caught everything there that needs to be caught. So other than that, I move to approve.
Second.
Move to approve with those changes and a second. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5, public comments. Anybody wishing to address the commission may do so now unless we are going to come to you in an agenda item. Okay, moving on to item number 6, the most heated topic of the evening, the election of vice chairperson.
Oh,
It's currently Alyssa Teely, I believe is how you say it.
that would be the correct pronunciation. Thank you very much, Tom.
You're welcome.
We had a big turnout for this.
Well, yeah. Would anybody like to, what do we have to do? We
Just
take a
nominate
nomination?
some-
We need a
Somebody-
nomination, a second, and a vote.
If anybody would like to nominate somebody to be vice chairperson,
I
you can
nominate to
start.
make no changes and
Alyssa,
Alyssa,
yes, okay.
Alyssa, be the vice chairman.
You don't want to
I don't
campaign?
want somebody to feel sad that they don't get a chance to do
Sorry, I
it.
didn't bring my yard signs.
I'll second.
A motion and a second for Alyssa to continue being the vice chairperson. I will try to not miss as many meetings, Alyssa, so you won't have to do
That's
so much
fine.
work. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Okay. All right, there is a motion and a second to elect Alyssa as vice chairperson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing. By the way, congratulations.
Thank
Hard-fought
you.
battle.
No, that'd be a certificate.
What?
Is that the one with the raise?
Just a title.
Yeah,
Just-
cash award?
just
yeah,
a title.
Okay.
All right, item number 7, public hearing, home occupation expiration. Go ahead.
So, the normal way a conditional use permit works is that it applies to the land. We had talked about it, and in most situations, should your use cease on your property, it would discontinue after a year of not being used. But then we talked about home occupations, while they are conditional use, they're a bit different since it's the occupant of the home that's kind of doing it, and if they left, would you want the conditional use permit to carry forward so the next person occupying that space could carry on what they were doing? This board said that it should discontinue when either they discontinue that use or if they leave that premises, so this is the language that we had come up with.
Okay. Anybody speak to this? Nope. We are making a recommendation to council, is that correct?
Correct.
Yep. For a change in the ordinance, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so hearing no discussion, I
I
would,
do have one comment, not
Shoot.
related to tonight's topic,
okay,
which is more of the second paragraph, but now that we bring it to everybody's attention, I read the first paragraph. A question comes up, what if there's no construction related to a conditional use? What if it's a marijuana establishment moving into an existing building, there's no new construction, no building permit?
That is something we'd have to talk at a staff level. The definition of commenced.
Or after the business began.
So if we say no work, I think we're assuming that means no construction work, but might be something in the future if we're doing some editing, whether
Yep.
it be changing it to no work or no use of that
Yep.
conditional use or something like that. But
Yep.
I don't want to hold this up because I think what we talked about before is appropriate, but I
Yep.
just
That is
came
worth
to mind
noting.
as I was reading this.
Yep.
okay.
I
All right.
move we,
Recommended.
recommend to the council.
Okay,
Second.
motion and a second to recommend the ordinance change to council. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Public hearing, rezone 300-foot notice.
So recently we changed the conditional use permit, the variance, and to be people within 300 feet of those things would get a notice in the mail. We had started the process for rezones as well. That got kind of stalled out, but in the meantime, I have sent those to properties within 300 feet as a courtesy, even though it technically wasn't effective in the code. So this is what that does. The reason we don't have that apply to, a rezone is an amendment to the zoning map. We don't have it apply to text amendments, just because that universally applies to the code, and we'd have to send a letter to everyone in town. So that's why it's specific to rezones, but not text amendments.
That makes sense? Anybody here to speak on this? Go ahead.
Not really, I mean, kind of on this lines of, sending out notices, there's been, I know at that meeting, there was a couple people that had asked for another letter to be sent out when there's a preliminary plan approved. I think the reasoning for that is a lot of the discussion we had last meeting was a little bit late because the preliminary plans were already approved by everybody, so it kind of puts everybody in a bind where you have developers already putting in a lot of infrastructure based on an approval of preliminary plans, and then the people find out that there's going to be a rezone involved, and so then they come. So it's kind of like, it's a little bit late. So I don't know, I'm not saying that we need to add that, but that's what I think the concern is. So how do we address that so that we're not putting either a developer in a bind or residents in a bind after things have kind of already moved around?
So the process for concept plans, preliminary plans, engineering design standards, and then the plat, that's all in the subdivision regulations. I do think amendments to those come to you all as well, follows the normal process. So if we were interested in adding the concept plan is kind of a hypothetical. If you would want, it's the bare sketch. If you want notice on both of those or just the preliminary plan, we can certainly talk about it.
I mean, I'm new, so I don't know what the right thing to do is. I feel like the discussion we had last week and the discussion the council had this week, or whenever that was, a couple days ago, I think a lot of that could have been resolved a lot better at the preliminary stage than at the rezoning stage on this, because it was a little bit late in the game for somebody not to be in a pinch. So, if we're gonna send out a notice for rezoning, but they already have a preliminary plan in place and they've already done a bunch of work, that's just a little bit late in the game for me.
So the council and P and Z can always deny a rezone, even if a preliminary plan has been approved.
But the developer's already put a bunch of infrastructure in, so they're behind.
So the developer then takes that risk.
Okay. I mean,
Right.
if they know that that's the risk, I guess either they need to know that there's a risk of some problems at rezone, or we've got to be more on page with what the preliminary plan means, so that it doesn't, something just, the rezone is a little bit late in the game if the developer thinks that they have the go-ahead to put infrastructure in.
I agree with this discussion. I'm not even sure where in chapter 15 subdivisions, I got it open here and I can't find it, where subdivisions come in, preliminary developments come in, what we have the right to say yes and no to. I mean, they come here and we approve them, but what exactly are we approving?
To give you a good answer on that, fully would need input from Tammy, but I can certainly give you my interpretation. I would just need time to read through it, but I can
Let's-
email you all an interpretation.
Why don't we list this as a discussion item for a future meeting? We
Yep.
could certainly do that.
Yep.
We can discuss any notifications you want to send out to anybody for anything. I mean, we did buy a police car last week, too. We can mail that to people. I mean, it really could be, I mean, as soon as you go down that path, where does it stop? So,
Yeah, and I mean, I get that, and I don't think we need to send out notices for everything, but I think that if the preliminary plan gives, if developers feel that if that is approved, that they have a go-ahead to start investing, that's not fair to the developer if all of a sudden they come back for a rezone and we're like, nah, and then they're stuck with everything in the wrong spot. That's not fair.
that is a discussion that we should have with our city engineer, since she's the one who would actually be dealing with those developers in this, as to what they understand is on them, what's not on them. You know, we can, I think we should that should be a discussion for a later date. Would you guys agree?
So one thing to highlight for the preliminary plan, what you are approving in the chapter here about, this will be 16-4, where the first page kind of transitions into the second page. Approval of the preliminary plan shall indicate, so the city council would be ultimately approving the general location of the lots, blocks, and streets, including the interrelationship to proposed zoning districts or land uses. So it's kind of general.
So it's in 16, you said?
16-4, under the preliminary subdivision plan chapter, it
Okay.
crosses over the transition between page 1 and 2.
Sorry,
So,
I'm not
Yep.
Well, only familiar with 15, because that's really what we deal with.
Yep.
Thank you for that clarification.
So I will say that that should be a discussion item for a later meeting.
Yep.
So I would now move to the rezone 300-foot notification.
I'll make a motion to send a recommendation to city council to approve the modifications.
Okay? Motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Well, just for the record, it says in here 300 feet, but that is for properties that are within the city limits.
Correct. If you were right on the border with a property in the county or within 300 feet of a property in the county, that county property would not be receiving a notice. It's just in city property.
Yes.
So if you're interested in what goes on in the city, we certainly welcome you to annex into the city, assuming it works out.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 9, gas station clarification.
It feels like we talked about this one quite a while ago, but this was just sorting out the districts and making sure that regardless of you being a gasoline dispensing station or a motor vehicle service station, by definition that the location of the gas pumps and islands, the numbers matched. They were currently different than each other, and that applies to the definitions as well, if each of those two uses. So it's just making sure like things are treated the same.
How long ago did we talk about this?
Feels like a while.
Jeez, okay. Anybody here to speak to this? All right. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Also move, recommend it to council.
A motion and a second to recommend gas station clarification to council. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing for swapping setbacks.
So this is the one that began with a conversation that our development committee had with the developers of Encore Park. They have a property out there that abuts to a railroad track, so that would eat up so that would be a side yard that would eat up a large setback because of the railroad track. So they wondered if we would be amenable to allowing in the LI district, HI is already taken care of, to allow them to reduce the rear yard setback that is 25 up to making that a 10 and redistributing that space to yards that are not the front yard. So you'd basically be swapping the rear and a side yard setback, most likely, to allow more buildable space on a light industrial lot, where you run into situations where something is reducing that space, whether it's would be a pond or a railroad track or something else.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So just for discussion purposes, I assume, maybe it's more of a question for Paul. So your interpretation of this is based on setback feet and not lot area, correct? So if they want, say, a 10-foot variance on the rear setback, if we give an additional 5 on this side and 5 on that side, we're okay. Not necessarily if it's so many square feet we're giving up on the back, that we have
Right.
to regain that number of square feet on the sides or the front. Or,
Yeah, I think it's the street number that you first said, yes.
Okay.
Okay. We don't typically use area anyway for setbacks, so. Okay. Anybody have anything else on this?
And this is all, as long as it's not next to a residential, right?
Correct. This would not apply to an LI next to a residential. It would apply to an LI next to either an HI or another LI. So even if it was next to a commercial, it would not apply there.
There you go.
So really, it's exception number 3 at the top.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval to city council.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 11. Looks like the industrial, or not the industrial, the institutional zones, public sports venue.
Yep. So we've had ongoing discussions at the city level with Brandon Wellness as well as the Hockey Association regarding the use of Aspen Park. So these two definitions kind of came out of that process. It puts both as a conditional use being this amendment and the next one, the sports venue, event center, as well as the public rec facility, as conditional uses just because there are institutional lots in town that aren't city-owned. Churches have institutional lots and other things like that. That's why they're conditional uses. And we talked through the definition, and hopefully this meets what we discussed. The main thing being owned and operated by a governmental or nonprofit is the kind of the big thing on both of them. We do have Mike from Wellness, if
Okay.
you have any questions about, or he wants to provide any comment.
Come on up, you good? Okay. All right, so item number 11, public hearing for public sports venue. Anybody got anything else on this?
So this one is the organized sporting event or activities. This one was the one designed for the Hockey Association.
Okay,
Organized hockey in a building.
if nothing, I would entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
Motion is second to recommend this to city council. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 12, public hearing, institutional zone, public recreational facility.
So this one goes off of recreation facility, comma, commercial, but changes that to a governmental or nonprofit organization, owned and operated by. So it's,
Okay,
and this one is the definition written to apply to the Wellness Association.
okay.
So on both of these, you've just, after discussions and stuff, this is what you've come up with.
Correct. These are based on discussions with those groups as well as our city administrator and our city attorney.
Right.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? No? No? All right.
I'll move to recommend it be passed.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That's all 12. In less than a half an hour. Kinda. Dang. All right. Anything else? I mean, I feel like we're usually here for a couple hours, so.
So the reason why the BMP facility language wasn't on there, I was out last week, so I didn't want to just rush something and throw it in there just to kind of half do it, just to have something. So we'll have a more complete draft of that at the next meeting.
We'll have more meetings, I'm sure. All right.
As of right now, we don't have a meeting on June 1st.
There will be one. I sent out letters today for a conditional use permit and a variance, both deal with driveways.
Right, I got email on that, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned at 6:53.